Rev 4.1 of the stock tracker sheet is now available. So let's go over some of the features and some of the changes I've made in this revision. And then we'll also update my stock tracker sheet individual ETFs that I do own and find out what my new real price per share is. Hello, my friends, this is Legend. So, first of all, the new 4.1 stock tracker sheet is now available. And you'll see a link in that in the pinned comments and down in the description where you can go join my Discord and get a copy of this spreadsheet so that you can enter in your own ETFs and track your own real price per share. And for the example here, we're looking at the summary page. And in the summary page, it goes and it just captures everything you've entered in all the individual sheets, and it puts it all into one nice little easy sheet so that you can see everything all at once. This is very helpful rather than scrolling and clicking each individual sheet to find out what that adjusted price per share is, how many shares you may have, what the price is, whether you're up or down in the play, and so forth. It's all pulled into this one nice little easy to see summary page. And then of course, to get to each sheet, it's pretty simple. You can just hover over that ticker symbol and a pop-up will show and it'll take you straight to that individual sheet. And in that individual sheet, you'll see where you can actually enter in your purchases, all the distributions you've made, and it will do all the calculations for you. And then of course, that will help to create and calculate that real price per share or the adjusted price per share, whichever one you want to call it, but it will create that number for you. And pretty much all this information is carried right over to the summary page. And of course, to get right back to that summary page, it's pretty simple. You can go hover over the back to summary, click that, and right back there you go. Now, of course, on the summary page, the most important piece of information on this sheet right here that I feel is the most important piece is that adjusted price per share, or what I like to call the real price per share. This number here, that is the most important piece of information in my opinion, because this tells you if you were to sell all your shares at that market price, which is also pulled into this sheet, then it will let you know if you would be in the red or green. Basically, are you going to lose money or will you make money? So you can easily just slide right through here and you can see which ones are positive and which ones you would actually take a loss on if you sold them at that current price. And as you can see, the ones that are red for me are WDTE, SMCY, ULTY, and last CONY. CONY being the one that is down the most, and it's currently only down about 13%, right? The rest of ones that are down, ULTY, I'm down 3, SMCY, I'm down 5, and WDTE, I'm down 3. And the rest of them I'm actually up on, right? And all of these are positions that I do own and I do hold. And if they are green, that means that if I were to sell out of that position at the current price of that ETF, then I will actually make money, because this adjusted price per share takes into account of that stock price for selling those shares and also factors in that the fact that you have made some distributions over that period of time. And that's why, to me, this is the most important piece of information. Not so much the actual purchase price per share, right? Yes, I have an average purchase price per share on PLTY of $60.67. But when I add in my distributions and everything, you can see I have a adjusted price per share of $2.15. So to me, that's why this number here is more important, because I really don't care about that purchase price per share. That's just the average at what I purchased them at. But since we do earn those distributions, that's going to offset this number. And you need to kind of understand how much does that offset that number by. And that's what this number gives you. So before we go any further, if you don't mind, hit that like button, as it would be much appreciated. Now all of this is the same as Rev 4. So what has changed for Rev 4.1? Well, we can easily just go right into the notes section of this tab here, and we'll slide right on down to the revision log, and we'll just kind of quickly go over what those changes are. So for Rev 4.1, I've added a closed position tab. And in that closed position tab, you would manually enter in those closed positions, and that value will get added in to the total loss and gain on your summary page. So let's just go ahead and slide over and see what that closed position tab looks like. And this is it right here. And as you can see, these are the ones that I did close. I added the date that I did close them and any gain and loss of that closed position. And how do I know what that gain and loss is? Well, when I do close a position, I would normally just make a copy of that individual sheet, and then I just move it to the end of this list of tabs here, and I just change it to closed position, right? Because what I do here is I do change that status to closed. And once I change that status to close and I've sold all of my shares of that position, then you'll see I have 0 shares and everything is pretty much zeroed out. But once you change that position to close, it will then populate what that amount of gain or loss is on that closed position. And this is the amount that you would take, and you would enter that into that closed position table. And once you do change this to closed, there will be a button here that does highlight, and you can just simply then go here and it'll take you straight to the closed position tab. And that's exactly where you would enter in that information. Now this is just manually entered, so you can choose whether you want to enter it in or not. I know I've had some feedback from my Discord members asking for a way to actually track those closed positions. So this is what I've come up with. This will add up all of that amount of the closed positions, whether it's a gain or loss. And of course, if it is a loss, that would be a minus that value, right? It will add it all up, and then it takes that number and it will add it straight into that summary page, and it adds it into this total gain and loss for all those ETFs. And this is the amount that you would make if you were to sell out of all the positions that you currently have, including the ones you have already sold. This is the amount that I would make if I were to do that. So currently, I would make about $17,500 if I were to sell out of all of my positions, and that also includes the ones that I've already sold out of. And we just saw those 3 on the closed position tab right here. So that's the one thing that has changed or I've added. What's the next? Well, on the summary page, as I stated, I did add in those closed position dollar value to that number, and we just went over that. And the second thing I've added is I have stretched out the number of tickers from 20 individual sheets to 30 individual sheets. So as you can see on the summary page here, if I scroll over, I can keep on going. Right there is where it used to end. So now you have a total all the way up to 30 total individual sheets, meaning that there is a tab down here at the bottom that goes all the way up to a total of 30 individual sheets that you can go add in and track your individual ETF. And back to the notes section, and just like I just stated, I did include and extend out from that 20 to 30 individual stock tracker sheets. Then on each sheet, I did add that hyperlink to take you right to that closed position if that individual sheet status was changed to closed. And the last thing was a pie chart on the income charts, and it was just a correction of that range. And if we look at that income charts, this is what I'm talking about here, where it does track your distributions per month versus the date and your yearly income versus the date. Okay, so as you are getting that income, it is tracking this. And the update or the correction that I made was on the pie chart here. as the range for this one needed to be extended in order to capture all of the future entries. But there's a few different charts in here. It just depends on how you like to look at the information. But as you can see, my grand total of distributions earned is $77,000. And if I did average that out for the amount of time that I've actually owned these ETFs, that would be about $3,900 per month. And that's just that amount divided by the amount of time that I've actually owned these ETFs. And that's from the very first one. So basically there were some cleanup, and the new features was extending out from 20 to 30 ETFs and adding that new tab so that you can track your closed positions and have that added into your gain and loss value shown on the summary page. And that's shown right there. And before we go in and we update my stock tracker sheet with my distributions that I've earned for each of my ETFs here, the one last thing that I want to take a look at is the one tab that I did make just for fun here, and is just to compare the price movements of two individual stocks. And it's only tracking those price movements in itself, right? So you can enter in the tickers here, and then you enter in a start date. Now, it will not graph it out if that start date does not exist for both of those tickers. And what do I mean by that? Well, for this one here, I've got a start date of May 4th of 2022. But if I change JEPQ to a different ETF and say I enter in QQQY, well, we know QQQY has only been out for close to 2 years, but I've got a start date of 2022 for that year. So let's just see what happens if I enter in QQQI and I want to compare it against DIVO. And when I hit enter on this, you can see that it does not show that graph. And there's a red highlighted area here that tells you to enter a date after January the 29th of 2024. So therefore, I have to change this date to some date after January the 29th of 2024. That is because QQQI was not out in 2022. So to do that, of course, if I enter in just this date of 1/29/2024, that's not after it, and therefore it still shows as bad, right? It still wants you to enter in a date after. So that's pretty simple. We just change it to 1/30 of 2024, and now the date is good. We now have a date that is within both of these open ETFs. And you can see there it is, comparing just the price movements of DIVO and QQQI. And it's just something to play around with. I can then change DIVO to a different one, and we'll change it to GPIQ. And you can see right there, and it just gives you a visual of how that price has been moving. Is it moving up, sideways, holding that NAV, or not? And since this doesn't even take into account the distributions or dividends, you can at least see how the price of that stock has been moving. So I think that's a pretty good wrap up of what you'll see if you do get a copy of Rev 4.1, which is now available to my Discord members. Link is in the pinned comments and down in the description below if you would like to get a copy. And whenever you do click that link, it will be a view-only copy, and you'll just simply follow the instructions right there on that first tab of download your copy, and you'll just simply click the file, make a copy, right? Pretty simple, as the one that you do download from Discord will be view-only, and you'll have to make that copy so that you can enter in and make adjustments to that sheet and enter in your own ETFs that you do have, along with your purchases and distributions. So now let's just go ahead and let's go in and start updating my spreadsheets so that we can find out what that real price per share changes to on each one of these. And we'll just start right off with CONY. So the first thing I do, I'll just hover right over this, take me straight to that sheet, And then from that point on, I can just click the sheets right on through because I do need to enter in that distribution for each one of these positions so that we can recalculate and find out what that new real price per share is. Now, just to save a little bit of time, I've already entered in that distribution amount for the date. And that date that's shown here is the X date, okay? So we did earn 40 cents. And how many shares do I have? I've got 98 shares. So my real price per share of $49.30 now becomes $48.89. And with the current price of $40.61, I am still down on the play. But as I've said before, I continually to lower my real price per share. And if the stock itself drops down to the bottom half of that Bollinger Band and that RSI 2 drops below 10, I can then purchase more shares, and that too will also lower that real price per share so that I can keep bringing my average down on my real price per share in hopes to get closer and closer to that current price. And eventually the goal is to get below that current price per share so that CONY turns from red to a green cell, right? So that's what we're looking for, and that's my goal of each one of these. But on CONY, like I said, I am currently down, but I'm only down 12.23%. So if I were to sell all my shares at the current price of $40.61, I would only lose $811. And I have a total amount invested of $6,600. So not bad. That's only a little over 12% loss on CONY. And that's at that current price, but I am continually to work and try to bring down that real price per share so that it just keeps decreasing this loss to eventually flipping it to a gain. None of this is financial advice and none of this is guaranteed. This is just my method and how I am playing these high yield ETFs. Next, we have PLTY. And on PLTY, we earn 45 cents. And I have a total of 37 shares. So my real price per share of $2.15 now becomes $1.70. We are getting closer and closer and closer to getting this one paid off. Because once I get this one down below zero, it is paid off and making money if I were to sell those shares at that current price. And that tipping point is only currently at 3 distributions away. And that's as long as we keep that average distribution of around 59 cents. Now, granted, we did get 45 cents. So therefore, that payoff of 3 distributions, maybe 4 distributions or 5 distributions, right? So it is flexible and it is moving because that distribution amount that we get paid out is forever changing. But this just gives you an estimated time, and my estimated time at the current average of 59 cents would be 3 more distributions. I like to see this because that just gives me an idea of when that's going to get paid off. And what do I mean by paid off? I mean that the distributions I've earned would be equal to or greater than the capital I've spent. Because as you can see, just right here, the capital I've spent is a little over $2,200. But how much have I earned in distributions? Well, I've earned $2,180, right? So I am getting very, very close to making the amount that I had invested. Therefore, PLTY would have paid me back for all the money I've spent to buy those shares, and then all those distributions from that point on would be a gain. Because until I make more in distributions than I've actually invested, I'm not making anything off of it, right? I'm earning distributions, but if I've still paid more than I've earned, I'm not making anything. And that's why I do like my sheet here, because it does throw those numbers right in front of you. It's easy to see. You can quickly tell that I have a new capital adjusted value of only $62.93. That's how much I have at risk. That's it. Once I've earned that amount, I'm paid off. All the shares that I have, that capital spent to buy those shares would be paid back to me. And then everything beyond that would be free and clear. And that is money that I can use then to do whatever I want, whether I reinvest it back into that stock, buy a different stock, buy a different ETF. I can do whatever I want to with it. That is just free money coming in for me keeping shares that I no longer have any of my money tied in on those shares. And that is a great feeling, right? So for PLTY, as you can see, if I were to sell all my shares at that current price of $50.47, I would clear $1,804. Not too shabby at all, if you ask me. Moving on to NVDY. So in NVDY here, I have a total of 71 shares. We got paid 10 cents. And that 71 shares is going to adjust my real price per share from $12.23 down to $12.13. And with the current price of $14.36, I'm sitting pretty nice with this one. Because my goal is always to get my adjusted price per share under that current price. And as you'll see, on most of the ones that I do have, I have worked to get there, but it has and is now under that current price. So if I were to sell all my shares because I'm just done with it, then for this one on NVDY, I would make $158. And that's an 8.8% unrealized gain because I have not sold those shares. And for ULTY, we earned 47 cents on ULTY. And to figure out how many shares you have, since this date is your X date, means you must own the shares before this date in order to be able to count those shares towards this distribution. So all purchases before January the 7th, I can count for this distribution. And you can see everything entered is before January 7th. Now, my last distribution only had 43 shares, but I made that purchase on 12/31 of additional 13 shares. So why was it 43 last time? Well, because that X date was 12/31 and I purchased them on 12/31, and that is not before that December 31st, so I could not count those 13 shares on this past distribution, but I can count all those shares now for this new distribution because January 7th being the X date and all of my purchases are before that date, I can then account for all 56 shares. So for this one here, that 47 cents, I get to enter in 56 shares on this one. So therefore my real price per share of $39 even now becomes $38.53. Nice, right? What a drop on that. With the current price of $37.58, I have brought this one down quite nice. Because now if you see, if I were to sell all my shares at that $37.58, I would actually only lose $53. Very, very nice. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to get across to everybody here. If I can get my real price per share under that current price, then each distribution, it keeps coming down on my real price per share, even if the current price of that ETF trades sideways. So that just increases that buffer I've got for that stock to be able to move around. And I just continually to lower my adjusted price per share. And of course, like I've stated, my goal is to get it paid off. Now that is not a quick deal, right? In this case for ULTY, I'm looking at 77 more distributions, and that's using an average about 50 cents. So that will change as that average of the last 4 distributions changes. So that's why this is just an estimated time and an estimated distribution average. But at only a minus 2% down on ULTY, yeah, I'll take that. That is a very nice drop in my real price per share on ULTY. Happy about that one. And for MSTY, I have a total of 95 shares. We enter in the 95 right here. And my real price per share, since it is a minus 5.16, meaning that is under zero, and therefore it is paid off, that real price per share of minus 5.16 now becomes minus 5.54. So I just continue to pull in those distributions, capturing those, and then I can use that money for whatever I want. Love it. SMCY, we earned 7 cents on this one. And how many shares do I have? Well, I have 170 shares, as all of my purchases are before January the 8th of that X date. So I enter in 170 right here, and the real price per share of $8.76 now becomes $8.69. So again, bringing it down, and with the current price of $8.21, I'm only 4.9% above that current price. So if I were to sell all my shares at that $8.21, I would lose 81 bucks. So just under 5%, I'm okay with that. I just need more time to get more distributions, or for SMCY to give me an opportunity to buy shares under that real price per share, so that will also lower it, or for SMCY to trade sideways to up, so eventually I can get under that current price. Again, that is not financial advice and it's not guaranteed, but that is my goal and that's what I'm looking for it to do. For AMDY, we earned 39 cents. And how many shares do I have? I have 164 shares. So my real price per share of $31.57 now becomes $31.17. Current price of $35.52 means that if I were to sell all my shares at the current price, I'm going to make 712 bucks. For YMAX, we earned 8 cents on this one. I have a total of 758 shares. So my real price per share of $7.70 now becomes $7.61. That current price of $10.12 means if I were to sell my shares at the current price, I'm going to make $1,898. And we'll look at this on the summary page, but as you can see, for the majority of these, this number that I make is positive. There's only, I believe, 4 ETFs that I am red on. And like I said, we will take a look at that on the summary page at the end. For WDTE, I have 71 shares at that 55-cent distribution. So therefore that real price per share of $49.13 now becomes $48.58. So that dropped that percentage that I'm down on down to 2.5%. So if I were to sell all my shares at that $47.25, I'll only lose 94 bucks. Not too bad at all. For QDTE, I have a total of 155 shares. We earned 15 cents. My real price per share of $23.26 now becomes $23.10. So see, no matter what that current price is doing, I am continually to lower my real price per share. So all I'm doing is I'm just giving more difference between those two prices. So if QDTE, if it were to drop 10%, I'm still going to be okay. And that's why I focus and I continually to work to get that real price per share down. On IWMY, I have a total of 551 shares, paid out 11 cents, and that real price per share of $16.13 now becomes $16.01. Current price is $20.49, and therefore if I had to sell all my shares at that current price, I would make $2,467. And I think as you're starting to see, I'm definitely making more than I'm losing if I were to sell those shares out of the positions. QQQY, I have a total of 551 shares. They paid 13 cents. My real price per share of $20.66 now becomes $20.52. Current price being $23.86. If I were to sell all my shares at the current price, I'll make 1,840 bucks. WDTE, how many shares do I have? I've got 540 shares at 18 cents distribution. that real price per share, 27.06, now becomes 26.87. And I just keep bringing down that real price per share. And as you can see, if I were to sell at that current price of $31.93, which is the current price of WDTE, I will clear $2,732. For JEPQ, they pay monthly, so this one here has already been entered. So there's no change on JEPQ. But as you can see, my real price per share on JEPQ is $10.66. And the current price being $59.16. If I were to sell out of these, I will make $2,667. And the newest one that I've added is DIVO. It also is monthly, so there are no distributions for this one at the moment. So my current real price per share is $45.30, and the current price is $45.48. That means that I'm pretty much right there on it. I'm only looking to make about $2 on a sell of DIVO at the current price. I still am green on DIVO. But since we are so close to that current price, the fluctuation of it could actually drop below my real price per share, and therefore this will flip-flop back and forth from red to green, but I'm okay with that, as it just needs time. I've only had these shares for a couple weeks. So that wraps up all of my distributions that I've earned. So I can go back to my summary page simply by just hovering over that back to summary, click the link, and we're right back here. So as you can see, how many red cells here do I have? I have CONY, ULTY, SMCY, WDTE, and that's it. So out of 15, I have a total of 4 that I am down on. And if I were to sell out of all of these positions, if I scroll all the way to the end over here, you can see that would be $17,841. And if we add in those closed positions that I do show in my closed position tab here for the XDTE, SOXY, and BIGY that I did close last year, those added in takes it to a little over $18,000 if I were to close out of all my positions, add the gains, subtract the losses, and then add the gains or losses of those closed positions. I will clear $18,000. That's not too bad at all if you ask me. Now, doing these high yield ETFs, it does take time, and it really depends on how you work these high yield ETFs. But the way I'm doing it, I really want to get them paid off and then just allow that money just to come straight into my bank account in the form of those distributions. And then that can be weekly money that will go into my cash account so that I can use to purchase more shares of an ETF or stock that I want to hold. Maybe I want to hold for long term, or maybe I just want to reinvest into one of these existing ETFs. But no matter how you're playing your ETFs or how you're investing into them, that is your choice and your decision. None of this is financial advice. I'm only showing how I play these high yield ETFs and the goals that I'm looking for. And since nothing is guaranteed, make sure you do your own research and make your own decisions for your portfolio so that you can keep track. But of course, in order to do that, you do need to know what that real price per share is, or that adjusted price per share, because outside of that number, how do you know if you're actually up or down in the position if you're not tracking that adjusted price per share? So if you don't have any way of tracking that real price per share, or if you just want a way that actually will do it all for you, all you have to do is enter in your purchases and your distributions into those individual sheets, just like we just did, and everything else calculate out for you. Then you're more than welcome to come on over, join the Discord, get your copy of this spreadsheet so that you can enter in your own positions and find out what your real price per share is, as that will tell you if you are up or if you are down in that position, and by how much. Are you 50% down, like it looks like I am on NVDY right? With a market price of 14 bucks roughly, and I have a purchase share average of 25, that looks like I'm about 50% down. But how much am I actually down by? Well, if I were to sell out of NVDY, I'm actually not down at all. I'm actually up 8%. So that's why calculating this number to me is the most important piece of information. And having it all on this one summary page just makes it easy to know which ones you need to focus on the repurchase if you're looking to buy more shares of any of these ETFs. Because if it's red, then that tells you if you do buy shares, it will lower that real price per share. If it is green, if you do buy, it will raise that real price per share. And I don't want to raise that real price per share. I only want to lower it for the majority of these high yield ETFs. Now, just because it is red does not mean that I am going to keep purchasing until it turns green. I have my method as well to help me determine when is the better times to purchase. And that's my method, as I'm sure you might have your own to determine when to buy or not to buy shares of any ETF, whether it's high yield or not, right? So if you're like me, I like to see everything all on one sheet. I can see where I'm actually sitting on all of these. And when I look at that green number right there, that if I were to sell out of everything and I want out of all this high yield ETF business, then I am going to make $18,000. And honestly, just looking at my stockbroker on my app, it does not look like I would make anything off of these because it's not going to factor in, at least on my app, and find out what that adjusted price per share is after earning those distributions. So to me, this is what helps me sleep at night, to really understand where I stand on all of my high yield ETF positions. I don't know about you, but I see a lot of green, and the red numbers are not outweighing the green. This is not to get you to buy into any of these ETFs, as I have worked to get these down. So make sure you do your own research and make your own decisions of what ETF or stock that you would want to get into. So I think I'm going to wrap it up right there. If you don't mind, hit that subscribe button and smash the like button, as it would be much appreciated. And as always, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please do your own due diligence before you get into any stock plays. And until next time, Legend out.